Kia ora everyone. Ooh, there we go.
Good, Sean.
Sorry about the quick hurry, but thank you for your time. So we'll get straight into it. Do intros?
Yes.
I'm Sean Watkins. I'm the Grant Portfolio Lead for the Sport and Recreation Department. With me I have Nick Harris, who's the Team Leader of Sport and Recreation. And today we're here to talk about the Sport and Recreation Facilities Operating Grant for the financial years 2024-25.
Sorry, Sean. Sorry, everyone. Could we just have we've got a lot of chatter around the table and it's a bit distracting for the staff. Sorry. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Chair. There we go. This is the Sport and Recreation Facilities Operating Grant. Sandra. There we go. So the purpose of today is for the Planning, Environment and Parks Committee to allocate the Sport and Recreation Facilities Operating Grant for the next 3 financial years. So the operating grant was established to support sub-regional or regional non-council operated sport and recreation facilities that help increase Aucklanders' participation in sport and recreation. So these non-council owned assets have been identified as very important to the sector because they fill the network gaps that council doesn't fill. The recommendation is to allocate grants for 3 years. So this is a more efficient approach to provide our network partners with more financial certainty and lower the overall administration burden. This follows the same approach that was done in the previous round in 2021. So the application process, so an independent assessment panel was selected and based on their experience and overall sector knowledge. All applicants were assessed through the lens of the Increasing Aucklanders' Participation in Sport Investment Plan, which is Council's approach to sport investment over the next 20 years. The independent assessment panel grouped applicants into 3 categories: high priority, medium priority, low priority / ineligible, and then made the following recommendations. So just the slide identifies the significant demand that the grant had. So we had 37 applications received requesting over $10.3 million. And the overall funding pool is $3.2 million over the 3 years. So yeah, times 3 basically. So the IAP assessed all 37 applications and after their assessment recommended 13 grants for the full $3,208,126 over the 3-year period. So 10 of the recommended allocations are to previous recipients. They scored highly and they're well-established, well-run facilities that fill a significant network gap. The Sport and Recreation team have been receiving their reports over the last 3 years and identify the positive impact that they make on the network. 3 facilities were recommended, established in the network, which are Netball North Harbour, a combination application from Auckland Hockey, North Harbour Hockey, Counties Hockey, and 1 new facility that is working innovatively to increase participation and activity, which is Eastgate. So a common theme was that facilities were requesting more than they'd previously been receiving over the last 3 years. So there may be some disappointment with the overall recommendations. However, many difficult decisions were made in order to fit the $10.3 million requested into the $3.2 million budget. So the overall approach from the panel was to ensure that many of the existing facilities stay operational and the investment is spread across the network to maximise the overall community impact. So this is a quick geographic spread of the recommendations. So a lot of these are overall sort of sub-regional facilities, which means they cater to more than just their local boards. But this is just where the facilities are located. So the recommendation positively impacts communities of greatest need, with the 3 local boards receiving the most funding being located in South Auckland. So that's a quick breakdown per local board. And then so the overall recommendation is to approve the funding allocation for the next 3 financial years for the 13 recommended applicants for the full total of $3,208,126. So open for discussion and questions. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Very, very straightforward. Do you have any questions? Councillor Williamson?
Yeah, just a bit of confusion on my part. Could we take the graph back to the geographic spread of recommendations, that one there? It says on the legend that there are 4 colours, north, west, central, east and south. But right in the middle there's a black one. And so it's not covered by the legend. Then it says there are 13 total allocations, but if you count along the bottom on the x-axis, you only get to 12, and there isn't one on the black one. And then the black one somehow is Howick, and is at Upper Harbour, and then Franklin, yet there was already a Franklin earlier on, and I can't see why Howick and Upper Harbour and Franklin all come together without a single number after it, but give you a black one that's not on the legend. So I'm just confused with the graph.
Through the chair, thank you. So the black legend, there should be a legend on it, apologies for the confusion, but it's identified as black because it's a combination application. So Howick, Upper Harbour and Franklin are the Auckland Hockey Association, the North Harbour Hockey Association and the Counties Manukau Hockey Association that's in attachment C.
So it's not geographic.
What do you mean, sorry?
Well, Upper Harbour's not close to Howick.
So this is a combined application
Yeah,
from...
well, that's what I said, it's not geographic. Geographic is a piece of geography.
Okay, thank you. It's noted.
So,
And then there isn't any number after it. Is there supposed to be a 1 after that? Because it doesn't add to 13.
yeah, it's, Councillor Williamson, it's very clear that it is one. Yes, there's a 1 missing, but
No, it's not. There's not a 1 there.
well, I think you can tell that it's an application unless it's...
All the others have got a 1, but it doesn't have one.
But I think anyone who can understand this can understand this. So just being clear,
But what about anyone that can't understand it?
this present, Councillor Williamson, this presentation is for us. I think the missing 1 may be a mistake, and I think it's probably unnecessary to, I think we can tell from the application that it matches the 315,000 that is that joint application. And the reason, once again, I'll just make it clear, the reason it says Howick, Upper Harbour and Franklin is the geographic spread of that particular application is from 3 different areas. So the application is an umbrella application for 3 different clubs, but it's 1 application. If you look at it's the Auckland Hockey have applied for it, but it's going to go to Counties Manukau, Howick and Rosedale. Is that fine? Cool. And I'm sure the 1 can be added to the presentation. Thank you. Is there any other questions? Councillor Henderson?
Thank you, Chair. Leaving aside that there's been nothing accepted west of Hepburn Road, because I'm a regional councillor, I have a question about Auckland Rugby League. So they have been in touch with me for help with their facilities. Just wanted to sort of ask you, are you working with that organisation and how can we kind of support them going forward?
Through the chair, thank you. We didn't receive an application from Auckland Rugby League for the operating grant, so essentially we can just work with and assess what has been, have applied. But we're happy to sort of, if they reach out and we can talk them through the process of the grant and consider their eligibility, and when the next round opens, invite them to apply.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you. We'll follow it up. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Walker.
Sure. So I've got some questions around the process, and those questions have come about as a consequence of engaging with some groups, particularly some groups that are that haven't been successful. So the issues that I want to raise go like this. So the council grant funding is often what you would call a form of foundation funding. So other people that would be applying grants and the like often look to an entity getting a grant from the council as This is operating grants? Yeah, the facilities grants. Okay, I'll probably leave this. I thought we were talking about the financial grants. But equally, the operational grants are also significant.
Yeah, no, it's clear at the beginning that this is just to make sure we don't get confused, the two. This is operating, the next one is the infrastructure grant. Councillor Newman.
Good morning and thank you. This will be very helpful to the recipients, including Pullman and my ward. With respect to the application for hockey, it would appear on face value that it's a pretty equal distribution, but it's not really an equal distribution, is it? Because there is a need in one area within hockey which is quite significant and far outpaces the need elsewhere, isn't it? So do you want to give a breakdown as to what that comparative need is, because it's come in as an umbrella application, but it's not really. I mean, there's one hockey outfit that's really in some difficulty, and others are not.
Thank you, through the chair. Yep, so we're followed up on the overall hockey recommendation. So essentially, it was approved to come through as a joint application just to sort of ease the overall burden, because obviously there's similar outcomes based on the three codes. They do have different needs based on the sort of overall percentage of members. So a preliminary breakdown potentially of the allocation will be based on membership and overall costs involved with having sort of more members. So at this stage, the allocation split between the three applications will be 45% to Auckland Hockey Association, who have 49.3% of overall members. North Harbour Hockey Association will receive 35%, who have 40% of the members. And then Counties Manukau Association will receive 20% of the allocation, who have 10.6% of the members. So a meeting post-allocation will be set up with representatives from each organisation to confirm the overall split, to confirm that that meets their needs and the overall demand, and then separate funding agreements and reporting requirements will be expected to ensure that each facility is responsible for its own reporting. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more questions on the operating grant one. Right. Is there anything I'll just get you to move back for a second, just in case there is debate. Was there any, Councillor Philippine?
Chair, I just want to firstly acknowledge the staff, because with the drop-in sessions that we had in regards to the OPEX, there were some situations, if I put it that way, that I believe, needs to be spoken about through a workshop. Because if you go back to 1619 with the Environmental and Community Committee, and also ex-councillor Kathy Casey's committee that looked at the grants in that year, and then you look at 19 to 22 when the PACE committee had that. I think it's time, and it will guide our staff, because, you know what I mean, with all the application that they are receiving and with the policy, that needs to be looked at. So I just wanted to acknowledge all the staff that have done this, because we will always get applications that are going to be a heck of a lot more than what we have in the pot. That's why it's so hard for the staff, and also with the external reference panel, sorry. So, Chair, I just wanted to acknowledge yourself and Councillor Dalton in regards to this whole application process, because you, as the Chair and Deputy Chair, I have no doubt at all, would have met with our staff to have a look at this. So, Chair, fully support this, but also, again, that workshop is so important. I'll be pushing with it alongside yourself and the Deputy Chair, because we need to have a look at it to help our staffing and really just to get the issues on. And we heard that through some of the pātai, so kia ora. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Councillor Philippine. Are there any other comments? So briefly, just from me, thanks again to the staff. And this is a really difficult task because there is so many applications for what is a relatively small budget in the scheme of things. But I think it is important to remember that this budget almost disappeared last year, and then we all worked together to ensure that it was there for our communities to stay. But it's up to future annual plans or long-term plans to increase those budgets if we think we can within, the rates and everything else. So just acknowledge that, yes, we would have loved to have had workshops. We did request those, but they were turned down, so the staff did a great job in those drop-ins, which kind of felt like workshops for them probably, to get that information out there to those who turned up. So this is a good investment in our clubs across the city. So all those in favour? Aye. Any opposed? No, thank you. Right, on to the next one. Thank you. And I'm happy to move this one in Councillor Dalton's second. And welcome Pippa to the table. Thank you. Sorry if you were on your way for the first one and we raced ahead a bit faster than usual, so kia ora. So back to, I think, Nick or Sean. You.
Kia ora again. Yes, as you mentioned, we have Pippa Somerville, the manager of Sport and Recreation, with us here. So that's all our intros. So now we'll be talking about the Sport and Recreation Facility Investment Fund for the financial year 2024-2025. So the purpose is for the Planning, Environment and Parks Committee to allocate the Sport and Recreation Facility Investment Fund for FY25. So the Sport and Recreation Facility Investment Fund was established to support the development of sport and recreation facilities in the Auckland region. The fund aims to support sport and recreation infrastructure shortfalls and responding to changing participation references. So the fund will invest up to $185 million over the next 10-year LTP. So just talk you through the application and overall assessment process. So the funding round was administered in accordance with the Sport and Rec Facility Investment Fund guidelines dated November 2023. So these guidelines align with the relevant policy guidance from the Increasing Aucklanders' Participation in Sport Investment Plan. An independent assessment panel was selected based on their knowledge and experience in the sport and recreation sector. Some of the knowledge and experience was centred around a national sector lens, an Auckland sector lens, financial expertise, and a multi-outcome lens. The assessment process was very thorough and considered many different aspects of the overall project to create a priority list that guided the recommendation process. Funding leverage and achievability play a significant part of the overall assessment process. So contribution of the organisations and other third-party funders is a key part of achieving the outcomes of the fund by delivering value for money by leveraging external investment. So the overall assessment process, once again, this grant had significant demand. We received 55 applications requesting over $40.7 million. And obviously that's a huge amount with the $13.6 million budget available. So the 55 applications were assessed by council staff and based on eligibility and overall priority level. So a shortlist of 24 was announced in March 2024. So the shortlist total was still oversubscribed by over $12 million. So $25.7 million trying to fit into 13.6. So that means many difficult decisions were made and not all projects were able to receive funding or the full amount requested. The independent assessment panel reviewed the 24 shortlisted and recommended 18 allocations. So that's spread over 11 different local boards and to 13 different sporting codes. So the overall recommendation analysis. So many of these projects are regional or sub-regional facilities, meaning the communities they serve are much greater than where they are located. However, to give the recommendations some context, we've split them by local board and code. So just to clarify, so there's no legend for the BLAC, which is governing body, which is its own project. That's technically not a local board, so it's a standalone one. So by local board, so Howick has received the most funding in this round. This is mainly due to two large grants to Highbrook Regional Water Sports and Pakuranga United Rugby. So these are just two projects that have come through the pipeline and have arrived at the same time, hence why there's a sort of anomaly of a large investment in Howick. So while Howick are well represented in this round, over the previous 4 years, Howick projects have been allocated $970,000, which is the 13th most. So it's sort of, this happens with the different years. Sometimes there's a huge allocation for one board, but it all sort of evens out as sort of time goes on. So it's worth noting that Highbrook Regional Water Sports is located on the border of Otara Papatoe and Howick Local Board, and the catchment of this large-scale facility will include significant parts of South Auckland as well. So therefore, it's not necessarily just a Howick-only project. And by code, so water sports and indoor courts are well represented in this round. So this is a positive thing to see, considering the significant funding in the multi-sports indoor court space. So the massive shortfall of these facilities has been well documented over time, and a reason why the LTP included a specific direction for additional funding for more indoor sports facilities. So the recommendation is to approve the Sport and Rec Facility Investment Fund for financial year 2024-25 to the 18 recommended applicants for the full total of $13,636,178. We'll take questions and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Leone is first with the question.
Kia ora. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's really great. I just wanted to ask a few questions around the funding for West Auckland, and I noticed there for that round there wasn't that much. Is there more work that needs to be done in terms of getting out to the communities to make the applications in West Auckland? I'm just trying to look at what some of the gaps might be out there.
Through the chair, thank you, councillor, for the question. Yeah, we have. There's not a lot of allocation headed out west this round, but in previous rounds there have been grants that made out there. It does, wax and wane a little bit. It's a good point that you make about promotion of the fund, and also about supporting groups to make good quality applications. And yeah, that is something that our team tries to do with the resources that we have available as much as we can. We also work with our sector partners, Active and the RST network, on trying to support sports clubs all around the region to submit quality applications.
Just one follow-up. Just going forward, do we feel like we've got the right process, in the future years? Obviously, I know we've got the LTP and the 10-year plan, but do we feel that we're confident that we've got the right process in our decision-making with that? Because are we getting a fair spread across Tamaki Makaurau over that 10 years? I'm just trying to get a picture, because I can see from this one, and you're telling me in previous years there has been an equal distribution. Is that what you're saying, if you're kind of like to look over that 10-year line? Because I guess from my perspective, I'm looking at our most vulnerable areas in Tamaki Makaurau, and we know based on current statistics that is West Auckland and South Auckland. I can see one of the councillors here just might not be agreeing with me, but I just wanted to raise whether we feel that we're actually, the methodologies that we're using to analyse and look at those applications, is there anything we need to be changing up in the future in terms of the long-term strategy for this fund?
Through the chair, thank you, councillor. Unfortunately, we don't have a graphic available right now to show the overall distribution across all years of the Sport and Rec Facility Investment Fund. We can prepare that and circulate it afterwards. I didn't mean to suggest that there'd been an equal distribution across the whole region, just that from round to round, we get a different number of applications and for different values from all around the region. And so the best way to assess the distribution is across the whole, across all rounds rather than just looking at one. In terms of the second part of your question, which is about are we doing this right? I think we have sort of touched on this in previous years as well, about the challenges that the contestable model lays in front of both applicants and council in terms of getting the desired sort of distribution of investment. So unfortunately, in the Mayor's direction in the LTP, it suggests that we look at changing the delivery model for this particular fund from fully contestable to, you know, a non-contestable model at about 70% of the value. And so we are currently working on devising the delivery model for that. And we'll be coming back to do engagement with elected members before the end of the year.
Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, and I think part of the trouble is right now we just didn't get the applications from out that area, and because it's contestable, the staff can't go out and kind of encourage because it's unfair to, but we have to figure out that new policy, how we can make sure that discrepancy isn't found. Mayor Brown.
Thanks for sorting out what is obviously difficult, extracting 13 million out of 40 million of applications. I had a couple of questions. First of all, seeing as everyone else has been parochial, we're having more and more people living in the centre city. It's now quite a large population growth, and obviously we can't have big sports fields there, but pocket parks and those sorts of things seem to be quite good things, and they're sometimes a bit hard to get into the system because there's no organised thing around it. So can you give that some thought for next year? And then with the, and comparing like sport, netball, North Harbour and Papakura rugby have huge numbers of people involved, and yet a big chunk is going to the kart sport, which is a single sport facility, and a large recipient of the fund, and it's not performing that well. I mean, how do you balance so that something like that, I can understand how you get Papakura and North Harbour things, because in Colmar and all those ones, huge numbers of people invest in them, are involved, but kart's quite a small sport. I would have thought I might be completely wrong here.
Through the chair, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Note your suggestion for considering pocket parks in the central business district. So thank you for that. Second part of your question relating to the kart sport application at Collindale Park. All the applications are considered across a number of different criteria. There's 16 sort of criteria plus a sort of an achievability assessment. The kart sport application was considered by the panel the panel noted the fact that kart sport was proposing that its facility would be available for a number of different uses. So not, whilst it's built for kart sport, it would be, it's not only kart sport that will ever participate in sport and rec on there. Second part of their assessment was on the achievability kind of assessment. Since last year, their project has moved along considerably, partly because Auckland Council has completed landowner works, landlords enabling works on there, and the trust was able to secure in the vicinity of $3 million for it to commence its project. So they've actually begun works on the site. So they're a fair way along through their project now, and so that was that bumped them along the pathway.
Well, that's very good. There's two things that I kind of really support is multiple use of facilities. The best ones I've been involved in have got netball and rugby to share the same clubhouses, and to have rugby union and rugby league staying in the same paddocks in different times is always very good. So if the kart sport is going to be used for other things, please ensure that they are. The other thing is that when we're receiving these, it'd be interesting to know what percentage of the total cost we are funding. Because, I mean, are we funding all of it with the money, or are we funding a bit of it with the money, and they've raised some money that would help? Kind of like, I'm sure you're doing a great job, and I'm not trying to get into your job. I'm glad the fact that there's no councillors actually doing it. But it informs me better and other councillors if, for instance, the $2.5 million is part of $10 million and they've raised some, or is it just the $2.5 million, which I don't feel quite so good about. I don't think you have to answer it this time, but for next time, could we have how much? What is the percentage of what they're spending is that we're funding? If there's a whole bloody lot, eh? Well, that's really good to know. In these ones, you know.
Yeah, they are different. Each one's quite different, but they had done a review. Was it last year? You might want to talk about that, which gives a pretty good. I think it's a pretty good outcome with.
Yeah, just run down, say percentage of what we're putting in, you know, and kind of. I'm sure that's something what you're looking at, and this is to inform me as much as anything else, because I get rung up about all these things, and so I don't want to complain. I just want to answer. And
Through the chair, thank
delighted
you,
that you're doing it. I'm delighted that I'm not. But I still have to be able to have rational answers to quite difficult questions sometimes, that's all. Thanks very much for that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we can easily add a percentage column to the information that's in the report attachments. In this particular case, the total project cost is $7.5 million, of which we're contributing 2.5, subject to today's resolution. Yeah.
But in the review, I think it was about we're funding overall these projects over the last couple of years about 30%, right, of something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that's correct. So it depends slightly on how you want to analyse the leverage that we're achieving with this investment. At the lower end, we're generating leverage about $3 per $1 invested by Auckland Council. Or if we slice it another way, which is just on projects that have only commenced, then we're looking closer to $5 per $1 council investment.
It definitely does differ between needs. Some areas we put a bit more in, other areas we only put a little starter in, and they fund far greater numbers. But it does help sometimes that we're involved. Councillor Fuller, you have a question about the local boards, which I don't know if the staff have seen, so you might just have to ask, unless you want me to ask on your behalf. I know you're unwell.
I'll try my best, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, my question was whether or not whether or not direct feedback or consultation was sought from the local boards. I know that local boards have raised with me issues that they feel they're being left out more and more from the process, and as shared governors, you know, there's a feeling out there that they're being ignored. So just wanting to know whether across the board, local boards were asked for their direct feedback for the applications. And then I've got one other question. Thank you, Chair.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. So for the local board review, the way this was done is similar to last year. So last year was a slightly different approach. So many of the applicants involved provide evidence of previous local board support, so landowner approval, letters of support within their application. And then once the applications were shortlisted to the 24, a memo was sent out to all local boards that had projects within the 24 shortlisted to identify any concerns. Because like I say, obviously support is implied for a lot of the project, so identify any concerns about, no, don't fund this project, we have concerns because we should be funding this project, etc. So it was more of an opt-in approach of please identify if you have any concerns going forward. So we didn't receive any feedback in April, but just before our meeting today, we had one piece of feedback from the Otara Papatoe local board chair, who identified how Collindale is technically located in Otara Papatoe, but we've mitigated that by ensuring that all the assessment panel and the councillors are aware that it's identified as a governing body project, and any investment going to Collindale shouldn't be considered as investment going into Otara Papatoe, should be invested into going into Collindale, which is governed by the governing body. So we ensured from the get-go, we immediately said to the panel, to the councillors, that don't view this as Otara Papatoe. It was always identified as a governing body. So that was the main feedback we got from the local boards in this process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But can you tell us what the feedback from the local board was? Because obviously it's located in the area, and I think what the local boards are saying is that when any facility, whether it's local or regional, is located in the area, they should still, their feedback should count for something, because we are in a shared governance model and we share governance of our city. So are you able to just tell us what the feedback was, or generally?
Yeah, through the chair. So the main feedback was that please ensure that this isn't viewed as an Otara Papatoe project. Like, identify that, make sure there's no sort of misconception that, oh, great, we're funding Otara Papatoe if we're funding Collindale. So we just, the chair wanted to be sure that there was no confusion about where the allocation would be distributed to. So we made sure we clarified that no, this isn't considered an Otara Papatoe project. The assessment panel were aware of this, the councillors have been aware of this, and every graph going forward is aware of this. So we tried to ease his concerns that I don't want a project to receive funding under the misconception that it's an Otara Papatoe project, when in fact it's not, and it doesn't serve that local community. So those were his main concerns, that ensuring Collindale wasn't viewed and recommended based on the assessment that it's in Otara Papatoe and serves that local community. Thank you.
Yeah, kia ora, thank you. And I know the chair's listening online or listening to the live stream. Kia ora, thank you.
Kia ora, councillor, thank you. Councillor Walker.
So I've got some questions around the process, Mr. Chair, and they go around how can we readdress the process. This has come about because I've had a look at a wide variety of applications, and there's one particular application that didn't meet the criteria, and that's the application for the Albany, it's called the Tennis Charitable Trust, but essentially it's providing indoor space for tennis, badminton, pickleball, basketball, volleyball, climbing wall. The escalation in demand across these activities is absolutely phenomenal. There was, for example, a piece on the television last night just around volleyball, and in particular women's volleyball. The demand is huge. Then there's a related issue that goes to the amount of use that the facility will use, and I also put a question mark over the emphasis that we put around multi-use, though I'm not knocking multi-use, but the critical criteria should be around the maximum amount of use that something sustains. That's probably more important. And there are other issues around leverage, timing and the like, and also operational funding. In this particular instance, that facility, if it's funded operationally, doesn't require funding from council. So these are important considerations. So when I have a look at this, it ticks a number of boxes significantly, but when I look at the assessment criteria and equity, outcome focus, financial sustainability and accountability, and yes, you've got other things around achievability, but how you factor them in, I don't know. There appears to be a significant mismatch at a principled level. So how do we address this?
Just to clarify, you said that tennis doesn't receive anything, but it does receive the fifth highest at $600,000, if I'm...
But they were applying for more than that.
Yes.
Okay.
So the team might talk about it, but remember that they've only applied for design and consent portion. If they're able to go through that, then they can apply again for construction. So just...
I understand that. Quite obviously, the design and consent phase is absolutely crucial to achieving later funding. So this is another thing that, in my opinion, is not
I'll get the team to
adequately factored in.
Yeah, so it's not, so 600 is proposed, 600,000 if you want to go through what the independent panel, what you can say, I guess, to the level you can on the tennis one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify the question I think I'm answering, what is the justification from the panel in its decision to recommend 600,000 for the tennis charitable trust application?
That was not entirely my question. That was an inflection point that the chair put on it.
You just might have to be clear.
My question is around the process, around the assessment criteria, and around the point that I would state that the assessment criteria and the process needs to be looked at because there's a mismatch, I think, around that evaluation.
Are you saying they shouldn't have got the fifth highest amount of money?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there was a case for a higher score,
right? Okay.
Based on what I would call real-world criteria that are at odds with the criteria and the evaluation that we may have here. So I understand that you've arrived at a particular decision. I accept that. I'm questioning the process, the criteria that are in place now. And that's my question. How do we go about changing that? Do you have any evaluation that looks at the process?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Walker, for the question. So it was raised earlier that we are following the LTP and the direction from the LTP to consider moving to a non-contestable delivery model for say 70% of this investment fund. That requires a reconsideration of the process for producing recommendations to the committee for investment. So we are working on something that we can bring to the committee for input and direction. We at this stage, I don't have anything concrete that I can offer to you in terms of answering your question, except that we're in the process of doing that. So there will be an opportunity for councillors to have input into the guidelines for the fund going forward. Yeah, I think that's probably, I hope, sufficient to answer your question, councillor.
So just a further question. So within the process, do you have a template that would consider, for example, the participation across, in, say, just looking at this example, by tennis, badminton, pickleball, basketball, volleyball, and so on. So do you look at some numbers around that and compare one application with another?
Through the chair, Yes, Councillor, participation's an important consideration. In fact, I think it might even be the first one in the list of 16 different criteria that that applications are assessed against. They're also assessed for achievability. One of the key considerations is the amount of leverage that is being achieved on each project. Now, you know, projects come to us at different stages of the sort of project life cycle. This particular project is nearing the end of what we call Gateway 2, so they're in the design consent phase. We are aware that most of the costs to date have been met by by contributions from the Upper Harbour local board, and the application information indicated that the applicants had in the vicinity of $2 or $3 million available to support the project, and it was the panel's advice that the applicants should be expected to carry some of the cost and the risk at Gateway, you know, in completing the Gateway 2 works, and so that was how they came to the figure that they did. Thank you.
The other question I've got just goes to another application that failed, and that was on the part of Curling, who have a proposition for the only curling facility really north of Naseby in the South Island. And my question goes like this. In a situation where someone's failed, but there's considerable merit in it, is it possible for us to generate even some letter of support or the like more formally that assists them going forward so that potential funders can recognise that, well, they may have missed out, but there were some reasons for that. Because in this instance, they've done their best to comply with all the hoops that you've put them through, but you know, have failed again at this point. So my question is around what form of support we can give over and above just this funding decision. And if there's a necessity for me to put a motion up around that, I'm happy to do that, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor. Well, at this stage, it's not something that we have considered, but we can certainly take that idea on board. It might, yeah, that's probably sufficient. Yeah.
Just a further question around that. Would a resolution on the part of this meeting assist? So we've got the latitude to do that, and Ms. Tyler might make a comment there.
I'm just trying. I'm not sure I can help at the moment unless I understand perhaps what the purpose of the resolution might be trying to achieve. That we either can't. I mean, there is some stuff we can't do at this meeting, or whether is it outside the meeting, Councillor Walker, you're talking about, or what exactly can we help you achieve?
The context is that council performs a very important role at this point as far as other funders are concerned, and as much and all as something might not meet the bar at this point, that does not mean to say that there is not support in principle or huge need for a facility, for example, curling. So it would be useful for us to be able to, as a body, and I'm talking Auckland Council, to communicate various aspects of support, because then that becomes a tangible outcome for that body to go to other funders, rather than just the outcome at this point, oh, you know, you missed out, sorry.
I think, well, councillors yourselves can write letters of recommendations to clubs. I think just my opinion of the awkwardness of because like 55 applicants applied to this and only 18 are getting funding. But the issue is if we give a letter of support but not with funding, it's a bit, it's quite a difficult conversation. So whether because I have asked about curling too because they approached me, but the issue that at a high level was that, you know, it's a significantly expensive project and they just aren't, as the feedback I've had, they just aren't at a point yet with funding to back them.
Through you, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
That is a given.
Yeah.
I'm just asking for the possibility of some form of support that is not necessarily financial support, but non-financial support that comes out of this process, because it is fundamental going forward.
So obviously
the officers might want to consider that in the interim. We've got a little bit of time before we move to resolutions, Mr. Chair, and I may come up with some resolution to put on the table. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess just from my point of view, you don't want to run the risk of putting up a resolution to say we write a letter of support and that gets voted down, and that makes it even harder for the group. So there might be some stuff we can do offline, maybe working with Active and Sport and Harbour Sport and others just to see what we can do. But it might be a bit risky without the full information at this meeting for us to then put forward, because endorsing something but not giving it any funding is kind of a mixed message.
Through you, Mr. Chair, all I'm seeking through this process is some latitude, and that might not only apply to the curling proposition, it might apply to another. And there aren't any financial implications around that.
Well, through the chair, I mean, we certainly, the team work with the sectors, the whole sporting sector, with Active, in all ranges of assistance, not just financial, to your point, councillor. So apart from continuing to do the work that they do, and we can draft a resolution that says to continue to work with Active and the sector, around achieving elements, but I'm not comfortable in putting a resolution that's specific to any particular kind of sport or project, but that is the work that the team do each day, working across the sector and through Active.
And through you, Mr. Chair, I was not seeking a letter of specific support, but rather just the latitude. So as Ms. Tyler expresses, we can do that.
Yeah, no, you specifically asked for a letter of support, so that's why I mentioned it, but that's fine. That we can all work together on this. Happy to discuss this after this. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. I'll keep it for a comment. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Bartley.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to ask, what is our expectation? Because I'm kind of picking up on what Councillor Leone mentioned, and it's a long-standing issue. It's pretty evident in the operating grants that we did fund a lot in our lower income areas because the need is there. This one, obviously, it's the organisations that have got the capacity to put in these multi-million-dollar bids. So how do we bridge that gap? And is the expectation more that we're going to rely on Active and Sport New Zealand, Sport Auckland, to do that brokering for us in the community, as they are already active out there in our sports community? But just wondering how we get more to come through into the pipeline for this facilities fund.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Bartley. Yeah, you're right that to note that it has come up before. I think the opportunity for that discussion, I think, will come in as we review a new delivery model that is based on the non-contestable kind of approach. It is a challenge in the contestable setting that we can only work with the applicants who come forward, and we can only work with the information that they supply. My team, unfortunately, does not have the resource to go out and support all the potential applicants. And in a contestable setting, we need to be able to offer the same level of support to all applicants in order to keep the process fair and transparent. And yeah, so we are very fortunate to have our partners in Active and the RST network out in the community working with groups. That does help share the load somewhat. I think it's important just to remind ourselves that these construction projects can be, they can be really tricky. They can be complex. They can take a number of years. They can be really expensive, and the community-led projects are starting from behind the 8 ball. They don't own the land. They don't have the funds, and so it is true that whilst council's looking to achieve support the benefits to be achieved from their activities, council needs to balance that against the risks of those investments as well. I think that there's a lot to be discussed, and I think that the opportunity of revising the Sport and Rec Facility Investment Fund and transitioning to non-contestable is going to be the right opportunity to really unpick the issues about how we get that investment to the places that Auckland needs it most.
Thank you. Thank you for that response too. And my last question is, I have no issue with who we're funding, but what is the community access that we're asking from some of these organisations that perhaps doesn't have quite a diverse range of participants? Because I actually find, I don't mind that we're funding the water sports, because I think that's aspirational for kids that don't normally participate in water sports. So how do they go beyond their membership to open up to other potential groups that are demographically seen as inactive? What is our ask given our public money that we're putting into it?
Through the chair, thank you, councillor, again. So the community access expectations are written into the funding agreements that we have with recipients of the fund. It does vary from project to project because the facilities can be so different. Often it can be primarily membership based, but then we're also looking for recipients to be we are on the lookout for recipients not to be pricing the community out of their facilities, and so where that is happening, then we'll be leaning on our funding agreements to ensure that ceases.
Thanks, councillor. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks. I understand the complexity at work here, and difficulty in balancing everything, and how things certainly geographically sort of even out over time across the region. I guess my question though, and you've answered it in part, I think, but I think it's certainly an important one from some of the groups I'm dealing with, and it goes to the little section to do with getting in touch. So we have this kind of gateway process. I just wonder, having heard everything about the the resource constraints and the number of people applying, what the ability is to communicate effectively with all the different partners, whether they've been successful to a point or totally successful or missed out. Do we have the resource to really perform that kind of helpful communication. The reason I asked that is, I've had a couple of communications where, someone's saying, well, we didn't get this, we wanted more, bring it up. Whereas I know that's not the way this process goes. It's clearly defined. You have outside parties, you have strict criteria, there's gateways along the way. There's a very kind of clear, distinctive process. So at the end of all that, what is our ability to communicate, I guess, with each one at the appropriate time to say, well, this has happened, this is why it's happened, this is what you need to do now, so that they clearly understand how it goes. I mean, I'm assuming that's a challenge.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Watson. So this, I guess, ties into the overall feedback that we give to our unsuccessful recipients or even part funders. So the overall process is the shortlisted 24 will all receive feedback. Particularly the unsuccessful applicants will receive feedback on why they were unsuccessful, the views of the panel, I don't want to say issues where they failed, but the issues where there were concerns enough to justify the spread. And once again, it's always a tough decisions being made with a oversubscription. So there'll always be good projects that don't essentially get the full funding that they potentially would in other rounds based on budget and who applies at that time. So we have a process where we give high-level feedback to all recipients and then invite them to expand on those discussions. So we've sort of got a successful history of groups that are unsuccessful one round. We work with them, we have meetings with them, we deal with them, say, this is we've focused on too much, maybe you need to focus on the more core infrastructure aspect, sort of tweak it in a way that says, this is how it would align with our priorities, and this is what you should focus on based on, like I say, the overall priority list. And then those applicants have come back later rounds and been successful. So we have a structure in place that it's not just a door closed, see you never. It's an open opportunity to develop the projects, especially ones that have strong potential and can have be a high priority in future rounds. So we sort of try to balance the feedback of why they were unsuccessful, but then also potential next steps to say, here's how you can improve on your application.
So that's good. That's what I want to assume. So, and just a final follow-up. In that scenario, then, it's not quite like a case worker, but do they have a sort of an individual they're dealing with that are taking them through this? So it's not like a different person or purely a kind of email interchange between whoever happens to pick it up. So do you have that kind of familiarity built into our response with the people, particularly if they're looking to pursue things no matter what stage they're at?
Yep, thank you. Through the chair, so we have a team of sport and recreation leads, and within those leads they're divided by local boards geographically. So we have sort of a north specialist that looks after the 5 local boards up north, south, central, west, and then east. So that's done in a way that they can become familiar with the community, build those relationships, and offer ongoing support, because I know what you mean about if someone picks it up and then someone else picks it up and you sort of start from scratch every time. So we sort of try to build those relationships through the sport and recreation leads. And then also Active have been involved too with supporting unsuccessful recipients. So sometimes we'll meet together with the with previous applicants to ensure that sort of they're putting their best foot forward and they have a good understanding of the overall priority list and any improvements that can be made. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Watson. And yeah, I'd be hoping the other 31 that missed out at the beginning also have that opportunity, not just the short. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we'll offer feedback to even the ones that didn't get shortlisted, and then obviously the ineligible ones are a bit more of a tougher case because essentially they're seeking stuff that may not be eligible to even receive funding, but definitely ones that have potential, and we'll invite them to apply and talk about the sort of potential improvements that they can make for the next rounds.
Thank you so much. Councillor Ferry.
Thank you. And just a plug for potentially getting the strategic brokers from the local boards involved with some of those conversations as well. But my question was actually around sort of the bigger trend here and whether we feel like we're sort of through that tail where we weren't really taking applications, we weren't able to assist people during the lockdowns and during the emergency budget and stuff. Do you sort of feel that that's that period of, like, I'm mindful that we signed off on a community facilities partnership policy, which is obviously not just sport and rec, just before the lockdowns. We were about to do some pilots on it, then, you know, everything changed. Do you sort of feel like we're back up and running again now in this space? Is some of this a tale from that time? Any sort of observations in that space? Might be one you need to take away and come back. That's okay.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Ferry. Yeah, if we could take that one away, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. No more questions? Cool. I'll get you all to step back. Thank you so much for the work. I know how extremely difficult this one is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I think Councillor Turner has been the only one so far. And Newman, sorry. Councillor Turner?
Thank you. It was really just to answer Mr Mayor's questions about Collindale and also acknowledge how complicated this all is. So I got involved with Collindale because the kart park out at Avondale was closing, and that caused me to go out to Collindale Park and be astonished at what I found. 137 acres of council park with multiple users. We've spent a lot of money there already, and you know, it's just a good thing for the whole of Auckland, really. So, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newman.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ken. Yeah, look, I just want to, thank you to the officers. And can I just say that I do think that the local boards, a number of the local boards have really ponied up to assist here, and the two local boards in my ward have both been instrumental in providing some of the funding needed for the feasibility assessment for Te Pauherenga Wakaama, as well as Papakura tennis and squash, which I think is really good. Chair, I've questioned the officers a couple of times about this, and one of the things that I would like is some advice when the review of the policy comes back. There is still the requirement in the contracts, as I understand it, for the construction projects to be at 110% of funding rather than 100%. And the problem with that is that these applications, which are part funded, a lot of the funding that they get to make the difference is from philanthropic trusts, for which they can only fund to 100%. They can't fund 110. So, and it puts a number of the clubs at quite a significant disadvantage because it's very difficult. I mean, look, Papakura tennis and squash, this is fantastic. This will get them nearly 80% of the funding that they need. They've still got to get $96,000 to fund the shortfall, and we're working with Courtney and the team there to do that, which I think they can do. That's to get them to 100%, but 110% for a fixed price quote for construction, I think that what we should be doing is having the capacity to vary the requirement of the policy so that if it is a fixed price quote for 100% of the construction cost, then that's the obligation that we require, rather than going over and above, because it will that extra 10% is a barrier to clubs and codes in communities for which they're going to struggle to raise that money. So I strongly support the recommendations, Chair, but I would ask that the officers take on board that feedback and come back and report back later in the year on that. Thanks.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Leone.
Kia ora. I just thought I'd also say really huge mihi to the staff for preparing this, and I just want to also say, look, it's a really exciting time in our country to be discussing these things and in our city after we've just gone through the Olympics, and knowing that all of this contribution here towards these communities could be our next Olympians representing our country, the young people, well, not necessarily just young people, because we've got older people as contesting in the Olympics. But I also just wanted to add in there that I do also welcome the review and looking at how we can do things better. If there is additional resource that's needed to go out to the communities to support them a bit more and getting applications through, I'd really welcome that as well. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bartley.
Oh, I just wanted to support the recommendations and to thank Nick and Sean. Is that his name, Sean? Oh, yeah. To thank them for their work and their commitment to seeing our communities participate in different sports, and then also supporting our sporting organisations with their facilities development over a long period of time. I'm particularly grateful for the ones that are approved in my area. And I'll also touch on the operating grant too with Auckland Netball, because that's a massive facility, but the issues are ongoing maintenance. It's regional, the spread is wide, and yet a lot of support to set it up, ongoing, but it's the ongoing maintenance that is a major issue. So really appreciate that funding there. And then for the multi-benefits that the facilities fund will provide, for instance, with the volleyball, the school is very supportive of it because it's a vehicle to engage students to stay in education through sports. So that was eye-opening, because I went out and had a look at some of these applicants that were in my ward to see what is their regional spread and what is the benefits. And also acknowledge Sport Auckland. I've come across them when I've gone out to visit groups in my community and the work that they're doing, Mike Elliott and his team. So appreciate that. So yeah, thank you very much, and very keen on that community access, because there is a lot of opportunity there for our communities to get involved in different sports, even though it may be something that you may not think it's something you're interested in, and yet to have the opportunity to go and see it and try it out is wide-ranging. So thank you.
Good, Councillor, thank you. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you. And so good comments by the two previous speakers, I think, in respect of the Olympics, New Zealand's and Auckland's investment in sports in relation to other countries, not least of which is Australia, is pretty rationed by comparison. So I think this time in particular is a good reminder to us of the benefits to our city, our nation, with this this modest investment that does so much. In the past, and I see some of the recipients here, that was often done by communities in total. So they built their own facilities, they built their own fields, they raised money within their communities themselves. Those days, unfortunately, have gone. I see one of the recipients in here is a good example of that, the Northcote Tigers Rugby League Club on the North Shore. In their heyday, they not only developed their own field with the help of the council, as did the local rugby club, but they had a magnificent club rooms in a commercial centre. They owned commercial premises beneath, which they rented out. They had restaurants, they had gyms, they had everything. They did that all off their own bat. But things have changed, and if you look at the parlous position now of some of our codes in terms of their facilities, that those days have gone, and that people need help. They still perform a magnificent service for our community, right across the board, quite transformational. So any way the council can help is really appreciated and really valued. That's why all of these are excellent applications as far as I'm concerned. A bit like Councillor Bartley, I just want to see the people that need a little bit of help given that help, because as we've seen, it's quite a process to go through this, very challenging, various gateways which have to be there. It's public money and it's over contested. So I appreciate this fund, Mr. Chair. My parting shot is to really thank the officers for the part they played, but also to urge that communication, be given a priority, as I'm sure it is, to help the various groups at their various stages, because the end result, inevitably, is a facility that has widespread benefit, that helps the mental and physical well-being of big chunks of our region. And if our investment is to be to our people as a whole, sports and facilities is absolutely fundamental. So for me, it's as important, if not more important, than transport, roads, development, all that sort of stuff. If you don't have that, you don't have a healthy community. So congratulations to people who have been successful this time round, and this time next year I hope to look forward to a few more, being a few further legs along on the journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And yeah, just briefly, just want to acknowledge our amazing feats at the Olympics. I think the last 2 nights I finally got some sleep. To get the record number of medals and 10 golds is just pretty phenomenal. And some of what you see funded here does help those future Olympians to come through. And some of them are, unfortunately, expensive sports like the cycling and the canoe slalom and things like that, that do need our support. And it is difficult for the team, and I know the independent panel, go over this and over through these applicants day in and day out to ensure that it's fair, but we do look at $40 million worth of applicants fitting into $13 million budget. It is difficult because everyone who applies obviously think their application is the best and it will do great for the community. So it is difficult to get that funding out, but hopefully, and we have seen in the past with this fund, that it does trigger that ability to get other funds coming in. And often groups who apply for that early stage consent and design and get that extra funding from other sources come back and we help them with the construction side too. So that's the pipeline we want to see. Do acknowledge the Tigers Club. Councillor Watson, my dad actually did the floors in the old bar on Birkenhead Ave with the big tiger in the middle. So I remember when I was a kid up there. But it has changed, and this is difficult, and we do need to support those clubs who don't have the income streams that used to come in, and also the volunteers now. People are all working a lot of jobs and can't do what they used to do back in the day. So just big ups to this process, and thank you all for playing a part. I know that we are regional, but often we feel like we have to focus on the great clubs we know in our areas as well. But this is a good spread, but we need to continue with that policy change and with that extra funding through the mayoral proposal and through the LTP. We'll be able to ensure that regional spread, and because some of it will be contestable and some of it will be led by us and the team, we can ensure we get the funding where it needs to be over and above just the applications. I know that Councillor Filipino would like to finish off. So kia ora, and thanks again to everyone involved, and hopefully those who missed out will come back and keep trying with us through this process. So kia ora.
Kia ora, Chair, and I can see Councillor Baker putting his timer on his watch. So just to let everybody know, I'll be taking up the 20 minutes as per the standing orders. So look, I firstly just wanted to start off on the Olympic comments that we made. And for those that don't know, we ended up 4th per capita. So New Zealand were 4th per capita in regards to the medals received in Paris, behind Grenada, Dominica and St. Lucia. So we're 4th. I mean, how cool is that? Yeah. So I wanted to start off with that, but also, again, just wanted to talk on what Councillor Leone said about our staff. I personally as well want to say thank you, Pippa, to you, to Nick, to Sean, in regards to the conversations we've had right through this process, and especially from the date of the drop-in session. Now, talk about drop-in sessions. I know that you, as well as Councillor Hills and Councillor Dalton, have been asking for workshops, because it would have solved a lot of issues that were raised today, but they were turned down. So, Mr. Mayor, I say to you, personally, and I will say firstly, thank you in regards to the long-term plan and the funding for this particular fund, and it was mentioned in the opening from our staff. But Mr. Mayor, I think what needs to happen is that the process around getting a workshop, that needs to be changed. When you get two councillors and the chair and deputy chair asking for a workshop, Mr. Mayor, I think their ask needs to be taken on board and seriously, because these funds, we need to support these funds. We need to have a look at them, Mr. Mayor, and that's because there is just so much of our community wanting part of this application. So that's just my plea to you, Mr. Mayor, is just to have a look at that process, because it is needed. I know you want to say something. I can stop and put a pause on, Mr. Mayor, and then I can continue.
Yeah. I was just going to answer your plea. I get that, but I've got also lots of councillors who want to have less workshops, and whilst I commend the way this has gone today, one of the things I like about it is that we're not interfering for stuff in our own area. So if you want a workshop about the process, happy about that. If it's a workshop to advance the cause for particular causes, that's kind of saying that we won't be independent. And personally, I'm delighted not to be advancing the causes of things that I'm involved in. And it's very hard. I know you've got a great feeling for Colmar, and I know the area very well, and it has been well rewarded. And so it's a bit of a tight call, and I'll take the advice from all the councillors. Do we want to get into choosing this, or don't we? And that's the worry I've got.
Yeah, sorry, the workshop is around the policy, not around the application. It's around the policy.
Well, that's
that
okay then. That's good. I misunderstood the request.
That's my ask, is to review that, because it hasn't been reviewed for about 9 years and even longer. But that's all it was just not the applications, no. The independence around the application, that is so important we stay away. That's why we got the staff, but also the independent assessment panel, who I also want to acknowledge. I know, for example, that with Pakuranga, with their one, having spoken to some of the members on that particular application because of the issues they had, having the compromise that we currently have, I want to say thank you to the staff who are actually doing the one-on-one talks with them. And there is a compromise. The compromise is, it's now reached gate 3. That's the compromise, but at the time of the application, they were not in gate 3. So they had to be assessed at that time. And as a result, they weren't in gateway 3. Subsequently, 2 weeks later, they're in gateway 3. And, you know, they need to raise 4.9, I think, or over $4 million. This helps because they're in Gateway 3. So I only mention that particular one because of the work that the staff, the independent assessment panel, but also the staff who are directly engaging with them have done. And Pakuranga now realise that next year, because they're in Gateway 3, hopefully the assessment panel, and also the councillors at the time will end up being supportive of their last sort of application. So look, I say that, have I only got about 12 minutes left?
You're minus 10 seconds.
Okay, 10 seconds minus 10. Look, Auckland Rugby League, very quickly, Auckland Rugby League. Can I say with Auckland Rugby League, when Rebecca Russell, the CEO, and Dwayne came here, you know, the offer was put to them that we will work with you. And all we're asking, and Councillor Henderson and Bartley have said that, and others, let's work with them, because it's about their facilities as well. It's good that some of the rugby league, or one application for rugby league is in here, but there should be more. I want to go through to just to say and acknowledge the councillors around this table who ended up how can I put it, who ended up asking for more knowledge about Collindale Park. Thank you. Not to me, but to the kart sport, because they invested over $5 million to get that started. They now going to build a clubhouse that is going to be available to some of the sports that are currently doing their earthworks as well. So to the councillors around this table, I say thank you. Last but not least, Councillor Watson, with your comment, you mentioned the support person, you know, and that's going to go a long way towards helping those applicants that missed out on this stage. But again, to the staff, thank you. To the assessment panel, please pass on our thanks, and just look forward to getting involved with the car sport and hopping on one of them. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Councillor. I gave you a little minute and a half leeway because of the kind of conversation that I probably shouldn't have allowed happen, but I did. Councillor Walker, last speaker, and then we'll move on.
So I just want to support the comments that Alf made around re-evaluating the process, the policy. I think that's important, because there has to be a feedback loop from the outcomes and the considerations back to the policy, and I think that's urgent. The other plug that I'd like to make is around the fund, and the suggestion that we also look at the possibility of increasing the fund. I would suggest that from a benefit cost perspective, it's phenomenal, and it's actually a better spend than direct spending on council's part in facilities. That is, a quantum of money here is giving a far better outcome comparatively to what we would do if we were building some form of facility. So I think we should look at that. The other concern that I've got just goes to communication and the support around that, and I take the comments that Councillor Watson and Alf has made, and the necessity for us to actually communicate in a way that assists, because other funders look at that, and all of these projects are on a journey, and our role is critical, both in our response in a financial sense, but also in a non-financial sense. So if that's taken on board by this meeting, so that the officers are empowered around that, then I'm encouraged. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker, and you're in luck. Councillor Dalton and I, with active, advocated to the Mayor's office pre-mayoral proposal, and the Mayor agreed to increase this fund by 35 million, and we voted on that. So it's already increased, but that's what the work the team were talking about before. So there is an increase that we all voted for a few months ago. Right. Yeah. All those in favour? Any opposed? No, thank you. Right. We will go to item number